The single biggest problem with solar power has always been the same, and it is almost embarrassingly obvious. The sun goes down. For as long as we have had solar panels, we have had this one unavoidable flaw. When the sun sets, the panels stop. And for the hours after sunset, exactly when millions of people come home, switch on their light, cook dinner, and electricity demand actually peaks, the panels sit there in the dark, useless. For decades, the answer has been giant banks of lithium batteries, expensive, limited, and prone to degrading over time. China just switched on a power plant in the Gobi Desert that solves this in a completely different way. No batteries. It generates electricity for 8 full hours after the sun has gone down using nothing but salt. And it is now the largest plant of its kind on Earth. Stay with me because how it works is genuinely beautiful, and it might be the missing piece that finally makes solar power work around the clock. To understand why this is such a big deal, you have to really understand the problem it solves. And it is a problem that has quietly held back solar energy for its entire existence. A solar panel is a wonderful thing. It turns sunlight directly into electricity silently with no moving parts and no emissions, but it has one absolute limitation that no amount of clever engineering has ever been able to remove. It only works when the sun is shining on it. The moment a cloud passes over, its output drops, and the moment the sun goes down, it produces nothing at all. Now, think about how people actually use electricity. Demand is not flat throughout the day. It tends to climb in the evening. People come home from work. Lights switch on across a city. Ovens and stoves fire up for dinner. Televisions, air conditioners, heaters, all of it surges in the hours right after sunset. This is what engineers call the evening peak, and it happens at exactly the moment solar panels are switching off for the night. This is the fundamental mismatch at the heart of solar power. The energy arrives in the middle of the day, but the need for it peaks in the evening. A grid that runs on solar has too much power at noon and not enough at 8 in the evening. And a power source you cannot count on when people actually need it is not yet a reliable power source. It is a helpful supplement. Grid engineers actually have a name for this problem. They call it the duck curve because when you draw a graph of the power a solar grid needs from other sources across the day, the shape looks like the silhouette of a duck. In the middle of the day, solar floods the grid and demand for everything else sinks into the belly of the duck. Then, as the sun sets, solar collapses to zero. That demand rockets upward into the steep neck of the duck, all in the space of a couple of hours. Somebody has to fill that neck. Somebody has to find a gigantic amount of power fast, right as the sun disappears. Typically has been a gas or coal plant fired up specifically to cover the evening, which means the dirty plant never really goes away. Solar reduces its work during the day, but the fossil fuel plant still has to roar back to life every single evening. Solve the evening, and you finally start to make that dirty backup unnecessary. For years, the proposed solution has been the battery. You capture the extra solar energy during the day, store it in enormous banks of lithium-ion batteries, and release it in the evening. And this does work. It is a big part of the plan for many countries, but batteries have real drawbacks. They are expensive. The materials that go into them, like lithium and cobalt, are limited and increasingly fought over. They typically discharge over relatively short periods, and they degrade, losing capacity over the years until they eventually need to be replaced. Storing many hours as power for an entire city using batteries alone is an enormous and costly undertaking. So what if there were another way to store the sun's energy, not as electricity in a battery, but as something else entirely? This is where the plant in the Gobi Desert comes in and where the story gets genuinely clever. The facility is called the Hami project, located in the desert of Xinjiang in northwest China. And it is what is known as a hybrid solar plant because it actually combines two completely different solar technologies working together. Understanding both is the key to the whole thing. The first part is exactly what you would expect. Hundreds of thousands of ordinary photovoltaic solar panels, the familiar blue panels you have seen on rooftops, spread across the desert floor in numbers that are difficult to picture. This is not a rooftop array. It is a sea of panels stretching toward the horizon, covering an area of desert solar to be seen clearly from space. During the day, these panels do the normal job of generating electricity from sunlight, converting the fierce desert sun into usable power. This part of the plant produces the bulk of the time output, around 900 megawatts of it, feeding electricity to the grid all through the daylight hours. But it is the second part of the plant that makes it special, and it does not use panels at all. It uses mirrors. This second technology is called concentrated solar power, or CSP, and it works on a completely different principle. Instead of converting sunlight directly into electricity, it uses sunlight to create heat, enormous amounts of heat. Here is how it works. Picture a tall tower standing in the middle of the desert, over 200 meters high, and arranged in vast circles around that tower are thousands upon thousands of mirrors, each one called a heliostat. Every single one of these mirrors is computer controlled, and they all tilt and turn throughout the day to track movement of the sun across the sky. And they all do this with one shared purpose. Each mirror reflects its beam of sunlight and aims it precisely at a single point at the top of the central tower. Imagine thousands of mirrors, all focusing the desert sun onto one spot. The concentrated sunlight at that point becomes almost unimaginably intense. The temperature at the top of that tower soars to extraordinary levels, hot enough to melt. It is like using thousands of magnifying glasses, all aimed at the same tiny target, all at once. As you may remember as a child, a single magnifying glass to a burning point on a piece of paper, multiplying the many thousands and aim everyone at the top of a single tower. Raw, concentrated. That is the raw, concentrated power at the heart of this plant. From a distance, the tip of the tower glows so brightly it looks like a second sun has been kindled in the middle of the desert. The field of mirrors itself is a marvel. Each heliostat is not fixed. It is a tracking machine, quietly rotating through the day under computer control, following the sun from the moment it rises to the moment it sets, always keeping its beam locked onto the tower. Thousands of them moving in slow, silent unison across the desert floor, like a vast field of metal sunflowers all turning to face the same point. Again, what is waiting at the top of that tower to receive all that concentrated heat, something almost comically ordinary: salt. Not quite the salt on your kitchen table, but a close cousin of it, a mixture of salts chosen specifically because they can survive being heated to blistering temperatures without breaking down. The most humble substance imaginable, doing one of the most important jobs in modern energy. This is the heart of the whole idea, and it is beautifully simple. At the top of the tower is a special kind of salt, similar in some ways to ordinary table salt but formulated to handle high temperatures. All that concentrated sunlight heats this salt until it melts into a glowing molten liquid, reaching temperatures of around 550 degrees Celsius, a river of liquid salt glowing with stored solar heat. Now, here is the genius of it. That molten salt holds its heat incredibly well. It is what engineers call a thermal storage medium, meaning it can soak up an enormous amount of heat and hold on to it stubbornly. So during the day, while the sun is blazing, the plant melts this salt and pumps it into gigantic, heavily insulated storage tanks. Think of them as enormous thermos flasks, the same principle as flask that keeps your coffee hot for hours, just scaled up to the size of buildings. Each one holds a vast reservoir of glowing hot liquid salt, hundreds of degrees hot, sealed away from the cold desert night. That heat can be held, stored, waiting patiently for many hours with only a small amount of loss. The energy of the midday sun captured and locked away, ready to be summoned back the moment it is needed. The salt has become a battery, but not a battery that stores electricity, a battery that stores heat. And unlike a lithium battery, this one does not degrade in the same way over the years. It does not rely on scarce fought-over minerals, and it can hold its charge for many hours at a time. A tank of hot salt sitting quietly in the desert, holding the power of the midday sun. Again, now watch what happens when the sun goes down. As dusk falls and the photovoltaic panels stop producing power, the plant does not go quiet. Instead, it begins to draw on its reservoir of molten salt. It takes that stored superheated liquid with salt and uses its immense heat to boil water. The boiling water creates high-pressure steam, and that steam drives a turbine spinning a generator, producing electricity. This is the same basic method used in conventional power plants for over a century. Here there is no coal and no gas being burned. The only thing providing the heat is sunlight that was captured hours earlier and stored in salt. The result is that this plant keeps generating electricity for up to 8 hours after the sun has completely set. It captures the sun during the day and quietly hands that energy back to the grid through the evening and into the night, right through the evening peak, exactly when people need it most. And it does this without a single lithium battery. Step back and appreciate what has been achieved here. The oldest and most stubborn weakness of solar power, its uselessness after dark, has been directly addressed. Not with exotic new chemistry, but with mirrors, a tower, and molten salt. The plant has, in effect, learned how to store sunshine and pour it out again at night. Again, the scale of this particular project is staggering. When you combine the daytime panels and the evening salt-powered generation, the Hami facility reaches a total capacity of 1 gigawatt. That makes it, by the developer's account, the largest hybrid solar plant of its kind in the world. It is designed to generate over 1.8 billion kilowatt hours of electricity every year, enough to power a large number of homes cleanly around the clock. Now, let me be honest and balanced, because concentrated solar power is not a magic wand and it comes with real trade-offs. The first is that CSP with molten salt storage is, at least for now, more expensive to build than simply laying down solar panels. It is a complex piece of engineering with towers, thousands of precision mirrors, salt handling systems, and steam turbines. Orders have become breathtakingly cheap over the past decade. A field of mirrors focusing light on a tower full of molten salt is a far more involved thing to construct. The upfront cost is significant, and as the main reason this technology has been slower to spread than simple panels. The second is geography. This technology needs strong, direct, reliable sunshine to work well, the kind of intense, cloudless sunlight you find in deserts. That is exactly why it is being built in the Gobi. It would not work nearly as well in a cloudy northern climate. This is a solution suited to sun-drenched regions, not everywhere on Earth. Again, the third is that it is not the only approach. Lithium batteries are getting cheaper every year, and they have their own advantages, especially their speed and flexibility. The future of storing solar energy will probably not be one single technology, but a mix of several, each suited to a different job. Even with those honest caveats, what China has proven here matters enormously. As one of the project's engineers put it, lithium batteries are designed for short bursts, but this kind of thermal storage stands apart, with large capacity, long discharge times, and zero emissions. It is built for a different and very valuable job, holding huge amounts of energy and releasing it steadily for many hours. It is a genuine, working answer to solar power's oldest problem, operating right now at the largest scale ever attempted. This single plant is only a small piece of something much bigger. It is part of a vast, deliberate push by China into its northern deserts, regions that for all of history were seen as useless, empty wasteland. Now that emptiness is exactly the point. Endless, flat, fierce, uninterrupted sunshine, and almost nobody living there to object. It is the perfect canvas for solar power on a scale never attempted before. The centerpiece of this ambition is a project so large it has been given an almost mythic name, the Great Solar Wall, planned to stretch for around 400 kilometers across the deserts of Inner Mongolia, with an average width of 5 kilometers. It is designed to eventually reach a capacity of 100 million kilowatts. That is 100 times the size of the already enormous Hami plant we have been talking about. A wall of solar energy hundreds of kilometers long, visible from orbit, built across a desert. Again, the pace is just as staggering as the scale. In the first half of a single recent year, China installed more solar power than the entire rest of the world combined, not more than any other single country. More than everyone else on the planet added together, the barren empty deserts of northern China are being transformed at breathtaking speed into the largest engines of clean electricity the world has ever seen. Step back and look at the whole picture. For the entire history of solar power, one sentence has been used to dismiss it. The sun does not shine at night. It was the simple, obvious objection that kept solar in the role of a part-time helper rather than a serious backbone of the grid. And the answer, it turns out, was not some futuristic new battery chemistry. It was mirrors, a tower, and a tank of molten salt capturing the heat of the desert sun and holding onto it long after dark. What makes this even more striking is that the basic idea is not new at all. Concentrated solar power has existed for decades. Molten salt storage is not a secret formula. The physics has been understood for a long time. What China has done is not invent the concept, but commit to it at a scale with determination that nobody else was willing to match, and prove that it works as the largest plant of its kind on the planet. It is a reminder that the most powerful solutions are not about inventing something entirely new, but about finding the will to build an old idea big enough to finally matter. The sun still goes down every evening, but in a desert in northwestern China, for 8 hours after it does, the lights stay on anyway, powered by sunshine that was captured and saved in salt. It makes you wonder what other simple, overlooked ideas are sitting out there right now, waiting for someone to build them at a scale big enough to change everything. If you find these breakthroughs as fascinating as I do, subscribe, because there is far more of this story still to come, and the world is changing faster than the headlines let on. Again, tell me what you think in the comments. Is this kind of molten salt storage the real key to a solar-powered future, or will cheaper batteries win in the end? The most thoughtful answer gets pinned.